My son's wife tried to steal my house. She called it a shack, mocked me in front of her family, and forged documents. She had no idea I was recording everything. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it has reached. The sound of expensive heels clicking on my front steps pulled me from my thoughts. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Natasha had a particular way of walking, as if the ground beneath her feet should feel honored by her presence. "Lorraine," she called out, not bothering with Mom or even a warm greeting. Just my name, flat and cold. "We need to talk." I turned from the window and saw her standing in my doorway. Her designer handbag probably worth more than my monthly pension. Her perfectly styled blonde hair didn't have a strand out of place, and her red lipstick was applied with surgical precision. Behind her, my son Vincent stood with his shoulders slightly hunched, the way he always did when his wife was about to start something. "Come in," I said softly, wiping my hands on my apron. "I just made some coffee." Natasha wrinkled her nose as she stepped inside, her eyes scanning my modest living room with barely concealed disgust. "No, thank you. I don't want to stay long in this place." That word, place, not home, not house, just place, as if my life's sanctuary was nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. Vincent finally spoke up, his voice apologetic. "Mom, Natasha and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to consider, well, maybe moving somewhere more suitable." "Suitable?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. We'd had this conversation before. Natasha didn't wait for Vincent to continue. She never did. "Lorraine, let's be honest. This house is falling apart. The paint is peeling. The roof probably leaks. And frankly, it's an embarrassment. When Vincent's colleagues ask where his mother lives, do you know how humiliating it is for us?" I felt the familiar sting of her words, but I kept my face calm. "This house has been in our family for 45 years. Your husband grew up here." "Exactly," Natasha said, as if I'd just proven her point. "It's old, outdated. Vincent has worked so hard to build his reputation as a top architect in Chicago. How does it look when his own mother lives in a shack?" "Natasha, that's enough," Vincent said weakly, but his wife ignored him. She walked around my living room, her finger trailing along the back of my old sofa with exaggerated disgust. "Look at this furniture. It's from the 70s. And this wallpaper? God, Lorraine, even thrift stores wouldn't take this stuff." I clenched my hands together, feeling my wedding ring press into my palm. My late husband Thomas had saved for months to buy that sofa. We'd picked out that wallpaper together, laughing as we tried to hang it straight, ending up with paste in our hair. "Vincent," I said quietly, looking at my son, "is this what you want? Do you want me to leave my home?" My son's eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to run through these rooms, who'd cried in my arms when his father died, who'd promised me he'd always take care of me. But then Natasha placed her hand on his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging in slightly, and he looked away. "Mom, we're just thinking about what's best for you. You're getting older. This house is too much for you to maintain. We could find you a nice little apartment, something modern and easy to manage." "And then what happens to this house?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Natasha's eyes gleamed. "Well, obviously we'd have to sell it. The land alone might be worth something, even if the house itself is worthless. We could use that money to finally buy the estate in Lincoln Park we've been looking at. Ruby deserves to grow up in a proper home, not visiting her grandmother in this dump." At the mention of my granddaughter, my heart clenched. Ruby was 8 years old, with her father's kind eyes and a sweetness that somehow survived despite her mother's influence. "Ruby has never complained about visiting me," I said. Natasha laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. "Of course she hasn't. She's a child. She doesn't understand that this place is beneath our family's standards. But I've already told her not to bring any of her friends here. Can you imagine? The daughter of Vincent Ashford, bringing her private school friends to this hovel? The word hit me like a slap. Hovel. My home, where I'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where I'd nursed my dying husband, where I'd sacrificed everything to raise my son alone, was a hovel to her. I think you should leave now, I said quietly. Natasha raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? I said, I think you should leave. This is still my house, and I'm asking you to go. For a moment, Natasha looked genuinely surprised. I rarely stood up to her. Most of the time, I simply endured her comments in silence, not wanting to cause problems between her and Vincent. But something in me had finally broken. Vincent, are you going to let your mother speak to me this way? Natasha demanded. My son looked torn, his eyes moving between his wife and his mother. Mom, Natasha is just trying to help. No, Vincent, I interrupted, my voice stronger now. She's not trying to help. She's trying to take my home so she can have a bigger one. There's a difference. Natasha's face flushed red. How dare you? After everything we've done for you, the dinners we've invited you to, the gifts we've bought you, gifts I never asked for, I said. Dinners where you spent the entire time talking about how much everything cost. I never asked for any of it, Natasha. All I ever wanted was to be treated with respect. Respect? Natasha's voice rose to a shrill pitch. You want respect? Then maybe you should live in a place that deserves respect. This house is a disgrace, and so is your stubborn refusal to see reality. She grabbed her handbag and stormed toward the door, then turned back with a venomous look. You know what, Lorraine? Fine. Stay in your precious little shack. But don't come crying to us when the roof caves in or the pipes burst. And don't expect Ruby to want to visit her grandmother in this embarrassment of a house. With that, she was gone, her heels clicking angrily down the steps. Vincent lingered for a moment, his face filled with conflict. Mom, I'm sorry, she didn't mean. Yes, she did, I said softly. She meant every word. The question is, Vincent, did you? My son opened his mouth, closed it, then finally said, I just want everyone to be happy. Then maybe you should think about who everyone really is, I replied. After he left, I sat down in my old armchair, the one that had molded perfectly to my body over the years, and I let myself cry, not because of Natasha's cruel words I'd endured worse, but because my son, my beautiful boy whom I'd sacrificed everything for, had stood there and let his wife tear me apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, touching the walls, remembering the pencil marks on the doorframe where I'd measured Vincent's height every birthday, the small dent in the hallway wall where he'd crashed his bicycle indoors on a rainy day, the kitchen table where we'd done homework together, where I'd taught him to bake cookies, where we'd sat in silence after his father's funeral. This house wasn't just wood and nails. It was my life, my history, my heart. But I also wasn't a fool. I'd seen the way Natasha's eyes had gleamed when she mentioned the land value. I'd heard the calculation in her voice, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, that she wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. The next morning, I called my neighbor and best friend, Mavis Thornton. Mavis was 73, sharp as a tack, and had lived next door to me for 30 years. If anyone understood what I was going through, it was her. That woman is a viper, Mavis declared over tea in my kitchen. I heard her yelling yesterday. The whole street probably heard her. I don't know what to do, Mavis, I admitted. Vincent is my son. I don't want to lose him. But Natasha? Natasha is poison, Mavis said bluntly. And if you don't protect yourself, she's going to take everything from you. Mark my words, Lorraine. That woman has a plan. Mavis was right. Over the next few weeks, Natasha's campaign intensified. She started bringing her family to visit her father, Theodore, a wealthy businessman who looked at my house like it was contaminated. her mother, Priscilla, who literally held a handkerchief to her nose when she entered, and her brother Damien, who walked around taking pictures and making comments about structural issues and code violations. "Really, Lorraine," Theodore said during one particularly awful visit, "I'm surprised the city hasn't condemned this place. As a businessman, I can tell you that holding on to depreciating assets is financial suicide." "My home is not an asset," I said quietly. "It's my home." Priscilla sniffed. "Well, it certainly smells like an old home. Musty. Probably mold in the walls. Very unhealthy for someone your age." Damien was taking pictures of my water heater. "This thing has to be 30 years old. It's a hazard. You could wake up one morning with the whole house flooded. Or worse, it could explode." I watched them, these vultures circling my life, and I felt something harden inside me. They thought I was just a foolish old woman, too sentimental and too stupid to see what they were doing. But I'd lived 72 years on this earth. I'd survived poverty, widowhood, and raising a child alone. I was not as helpless as they assumed. That evening, after they'd all left, I found Ruby sitting on my porch steps, looking sad. "Grandma," she said softly, "is your house really bad?" I sat down beside her, my old bones creaking. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Ruby looked up at me with those honest eyes. "I think it's perfect. It smells like cookies and old books. And you have that window seat where we read stories, and the garden where we plant flowers. I love your house, Grandma." I hugged her close, feeling tears prick my eyes. "I love it too, Ruby, very much." "Then why does Mom say it's awful? Why does she say I shouldn't bring my friends here?" I chose my words carefully. Sometimes, people think that new and expensive means better, but the best things in life aren't always the shiniest ones. They're the ones filled with love and memories. Ruby nodded, then whispered. "I heard Mom talking on the phone. She said once you sign the papers, they can finally get rid of this place and buy their dream house." "What papers, Grandma?" My blood ran cold. "What else did you hear, sweetheart?" "She said you're old and confused, and it'll be easy to make you sign. She said Grandpa Theodore knows a notary who can help. I don't know what that means, but it made me feel scared." I held Ruby tighter, my mind racing. So, that was Natasha's plan. She was going to try to trick me into signing over my house, probably claiming I was mentally incompetent or didn't understand what I was signing. "Ruby," I said gently, "I need you to do something for me. If you ever hear your mother or anyone else talking about me or this house, I need you to remember what they say. Can you do that?" Ruby nodded seriously. "Like a spy?" "Exactly like a spy," I said, managing a smile. "Our secret mission." After Ruby left with her father, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. If Natasha wanted to play games, I would play too. But I'd been playing the game of life a lot longer than she had, and I knew moves she'd never even dreamed of. The next morning, I called Harrison Caldwell, my lawyer and an old friend of my late husband. Harrison was 65, semi-retired, but still sharp as ever. "Lorraine," he said warmly when I arrived at his office, "it's been too long. What can I do for you?" I told him everything. Natasha's insults, the family's pressure, Ruby's overheard conversation about papers and notaries. Harrison's face grew grimmer with each detail. "They're planning to defraud you," he said flatly. "Probably forge a power of attorney or a deed transfer. If they have a corrupt notary involved, they could make it look legitimate." "Can they do that?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "They can try," Harrison said, "but we're going to make sure they fail. First, I'm going to file a legal notice that you are of sound mind and that any documents signed without my presence as your attorney are to be considered fraudulent. Second, we're going to update your will with some very specific provisions. And third," he smiled grimly, "we're going to let them think they're winning." Over the next week, Harrison and I worked on my will. I made some very particular decisions about my estate, decisions that would have surprised anyone who thought they knew me. Meanwhile, Natasha escalated her campaign. She started bringing real estate agents to my house without my permission, claiming she had a key that Vincent had given her. I'd come home from grocery shopping to find strangers walking through my rooms, taking measurements, discussing renovation potential and tear-down value. "This is still my house," I told one particularly aggressive agent. "I haven't agreed to sell." The agent looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Ashford, I was told by Mrs. Natasha Ashford that you'd agreed to list the property. She said you were just a bit confused about the details." "I am not confused," I said firmly, "and I want you to leave." After the agent left, I called Harrison. "They're telling people I'm mentally incompetent." "Perfect," Harrison said. "Let them. We're documenting everything. I've also hired a private investigator to look into this notary Ruby mentioned. If we can prove they're planning fraud, we can have them arrested." The investigator, a quiet man named Pete Rossi, discovered that Damien Kensington had indeed contacted a notary named Gerald Finch, who had a history of questionable dealings. Pete managed to record a conversation where Damien discussed getting the old lady to sign without reading too carefully. "This is gold," Harrison said when Pete played him the recording. "But let's wait. Let's see how far they'll actually go." I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, Natasha showed up at my door with her father Theodore, her brother Damien, and a man I didn't know carrying a briefcase. "Lorraine," Natasha said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "we've brought someone to help you with some paperwork. This is Mr. Finch. He's a notary, and he's going to help you sign some documents that will make everything so much easier for you." "What documents?" I asked, playing confused. Theodore stepped forward, his voice patronizing. "Now, Lorraine, don't worry your head about the details. These are just some papers that will help Vincent and Natasha take care of your affairs. You're getting older, and it's too much for you to handle alone." "But I'm not alone," I said. "I have my lawyer, Harrison Caldwell." Natasha's smile tightened. "Oh, Lorraine, you don't need to bother Mr. Caldwell with this. These are just simple documents. A power of attorney so Vincent can help you with bills and things, and a little transfer of the house deed into a family trust. It's all very standard." "A family trust?" I repeated. "Yes," Damien chimed in. "It's for tax purposes. Very beneficial for you. You'll still live here, of course. We'd never kick you out. We just need the house to be in the trust for legal reasons." I looked at Mr. Finch, who was opening his briefcase and pulling out documents. I could see the papers were already filled out, just waiting for my signature. "I don't know," I said, wringing my hands. "It seems complicated. Maybe I should call Harrison." "No," Natasha said sharply, then softened her tone. "I mean, there's no need to bother him. Mr. Finch is a professional. He can answer any questions you have." Mr. Finch nodded, his smile oily. "Mrs. Ashford, I assure you, these documents are perfectly standard. If you'll just sign here, and here, and here." He pointed to signature lines, flipping pages quickly so I couldn't read them. I picked up the pen, my hand shaking slightly. Natasha leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Theodore smiled. Damien actually licked his lips. Then I put the pen down. "No," I said quietly. "What?" Natasha's voice was sharp. I said no. I'm not signing anything without my lawyer present. Theodore's face darkened. "Now see here, Lorraine. We're trying to help you. Don't be difficult." "I'm not being difficult," I said, my voice stronger now. "I'm being careful, and I want you all to leave my house. Now." Natasha's mask finally slipped completely. "You stupid old woman! Do you have any idea what we're offering you? We're trying to save you from yourself." "Get out," I said. "This house is a dump," Natasha screamed. "It's worthless. You're worthless. And when we finally get what we deserve, you'll be sorry you didn't cooperate." "I said, get out," I shouted back, surprising even myself. Mavis, who I'd asked to be nearby, suddenly appeared at my door. "Is there a problem here, Lorraine? Should I call the police?" The mention of police made Mr. Finch grab his briefcase and hurry out. Theodore and Damien followed quickly. Natasha stood there for a moment longer, her face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Vincent is my husband. Everything that's his is mine. And that includes you and this pathetic house." After they left, I collapsed into my chair, shaking. Mavis made me tea and sat with me. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "That was attempted fraud, plain and simple." I called Harrison immediately. He listened to my account and said, "Perfect. We have them." Pete recorded the whole thing from the van outside. "We have video and audio of them trying to coerce you into signing fraudulent documents. But Lorraine, I think we should wait just a little longer. Let's see what their next move is." Their next move came from an unexpected direction. Vincent showed up alone the next evening, looking haggard. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk." I let him in, my heart aching. This was my son, my baby boy, and I could see the conflict tearing him apart. "Natasha is furious," he said. "She says you embarrassed her in front of her family. She says you're being selfish and stubborn." "Vincent," I said gently, "do you know what those papers were that they wanted me to sign?" He looked uncomfortable. "Natasha said it was just a power of attorney, to help you." "It was a deed transfer," I said. "They were trying to trick me into signing over my house." Vincent's face went pale. No, that can't be right. Natasha wouldn't." "Vincent, your wife has been planning this for weeks. She's been telling people I'm mentally incompetent. She brought a corrupt notary to my house to witness fraudulent documents. She's been using you to get to me." My son sat down heavily, his head in his hands. I can't believe. "I know it's hard," I said, sitting beside him. "I know you love her. But Vincent, you need to see who she really is." "She's my wife," he said weakly, "the mother of my daughter." "And I'm your mother," I said. "The woman who raised you alone after your father died, who worked 2 jobs to put you through architecture school, who has never asked you for anything except to be treated with respect. Can you honestly say Natasha has given me that?" Vincent was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to stand up for what's right," I said. "I want you to protect your daughter from learning that greed and manipulation are acceptable. And I want you to be the man your father and I raised you to be." Vincent left without answering, and I didn't know if I'd gotten through to him or not. But I'd said what needed to be said. A week later, I received devastating news. Or rather, I pretended to receive devastating news. Harrison and I had planned this carefully. I called Vincent and told him I'd collapsed and been taken to the hospital. When he arrived with Natasha and Ruby, I was in a hospital bed, looking appropriately frail. The doctor, who was in on our plan, explained that I'd had a serious health scare and that at my age, I needed to get my affairs in order. Natasha's eyes lit up at those words, though she tried to hide it behind a mask of concern. "Oh, Lorraine," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "This must be so frightening for you. But don't worry, we're here to help with everything." Over the next few days, I played my part perfectly. I seemed confused, tired, and worried about what would happen to my house after I was gone. Natasha was suddenly very attentive, visiting every day, bringing flowers, speaking in a gentle voice that made my skin crawl, because I knew it was all an act. "You know, Lorraine," she said one afternoon, "you really should think about what will happen to your house. It would be such a burden for Vincent to deal with after. Maybe it would be better to transfer it now, while you can still make decisions." "I have a will," I said weakly. "Oh, a will," Natasha waved her hand dismissively. "Those can be so complicated. Probate takes forever. It would be much simpler to just sign the house over now. To Vincent, of course. He's your son. He deserves it. I suppose you're right, I said, and I saw triumph flash in her eyes. I'll have the papers drawn up, she said quickly. We can do it right here in the hospital. I'm sure we can find a notary. No, I interrupted. If I'm going to do this, it has to be done properly, through my lawyer, Harrison Caldwell. And I want to update my will at the same time. Natasha looked frustrated but nodded. Of course. Whatever you want, Lorraine. I was released from the hospital a few days later, and Harrison came to my house to discuss my will. I insisted that Natasha and Vincent be present, along with Mavis as a witness. Now, Mrs. Ashford, Harrison said formally, you've asked me to read your current will and discuss any changes you'd like to make. Is that correct? Yes, I said. Natasha leaned forward eagerly. Vincent looked uncomfortable. Mavis sat quietly in the corner, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out documents. Your current will, written 5 years ago, leaves everything to your son Vincent. However, you've expressed concerns about making some changes. Would you like to discuss those now? Yes, I said. I've been thinking a lot about my house, about what it means and who should have it. Naturally, it should go to Vincent, Natasha interjected. He's your only child. I looked at her. I wasn't finished speaking. She pressed her lips together, clearly struggling to maintain her pleasant facade. I've decided, I continued, that I want to know the true value of my property before I make any final decisions. Harrison, you had an appraisal done? Harrison nodded. Yes. Mrs. Ashford, your property has been appraised at $4.2 million. The room went silent. Natasha's mouth fell open. Vincent looked shocked. Even Mavis, who knew the neighborhood had been appreciating, looked surprised. $4 million? Natasha stammered. Yes, Harrison said. The house itself is worth approximately $300,000 after renovations. But the land, due to the new commercial development planned for this area, is worth $3.9 million. Several developers have expressed interest in purchasing the property. I watched Natasha's face transform. The false sympathy disappeared, replaced by naked greed. She looked at me with new eyes, no longer seeing a foolish old woman, but an obstacle standing between her and millions of dollars. Well, she said, her voice shaking slightly, that certainly changes things. Lorraine, you must see now how important it is to transfer this property properly. $4 million. You can't possibly manage that kind of asset alone. Vincent needs to take control immediately. Actually, I said calmly, I've decided to make some changes to my will. What kind of changes? Natasha demanded, her pleasant mask completely gone now. I'm leaving the house and property to my granddaughter Ruby, I said, in a trust that she'll receive when she turns 25. Until then, Mavis Thornton will be the trustee, managing the property and ensuring Ruby's inheritance is protected. Natasha shot to her feet. What? No, absolutely not. That property belongs to Vincent. He's your son. Vincent will receive my other assets, I said. My savings, my life insurance, my personal belongings. But the house goes to Ruby. This is insane, Natasha shrieked. You can't do this. Vincent, say something. Vincent was staring at me, his face unreadable. Mom, why? Because, Vincent, I said gently. I've seen what greed does to people. I've watched your wife try to manipulate me, insult me, and scheme to steal my home. I won't let her have it. But Ruby loves this house. She sees its value not in dollars, but in memories. She deserves to inherit something built on love, not greed. You bitter old hag, Natasha screamed. You're doing this to punish me. After everything I've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I repeated. You've called my home a shack, a dump, a hovel. You've told your daughter not to bring friends here because you're embarrassed. You've tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. You've attempted to forge documents to steal my property. Exactly what have you done for me, Natasha? This is. Natasha was sputtering, her face red with rage. Furthermore, Harrison continued calmly, Mrs. Ashford has provided me with evidence of attempted fraud. We have recordings of you and your family trying to coerce her into signing fraudulent documents. We have testimony from your daughter Ruby about conversations she overheard. And we have video evidence of your attempted deed transfer with a notary who is currently under investigation for similar crimes. Natasha's face went from red to white. You were recording us? I was protecting myself, I said. Something I should have done from the beginning. Theodore, Priscilla, and Damien, who had been called to join us for the will reading, arrived at that moment. They walked in with confident smiles, clearly expecting good news. Ah, Lorraine, Theodore said jovially. I hear we're finally getting this property situation sorted out. Very wise of you to. Mr. Kensington, Harrison interrupted. I should inform you that you and your family are currently under investigation for attempted fraud and elder abuse. I'd recommend you contact your attorney. The color drained from Theodore's face. Priscilla gasped. Damien looked like he might be sick. This is ridiculous, Theodore blustered. We were trying to help. You were trying to steal, Mavis spoke up from her corner. I heard every word. I saw every manipulation, and I'll testify to all of it in court if necessary. You can't do this to us, Priscilla shrieked. We're a respected family. Theodore is a prominent businessman. Then perhaps you should have acted with the integrity that position requires, Harrison said coldly. Natasha turned to Vincent, her voice desperate now. Vincent, you're my husband. Tell them. Tell them the house should be ours. We're married. What's yours is mine. Vincent stood up slowly. He looked at his wife, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. Is it true? He asked quietly. Did you try to trick my mother into signing over her house? I was trying to help, Natasha insisted. She's old. She doesn't understand. Did you tell Ruby not to bring her friends to my mother's house because you were embarrassed? Natasha hesitated. Vincent, you have to understand your career. Did you call my mother's home a dump? A shack? A hovel? It is, Natasha exploded. Look at this place. It's pathetic. And she's pathetic for clinging to it. We could have had millions, Vincent. We could have had the life we deserve. But no, your sentimental old mother had to ruin everything. The room fell silent. Vincent looked at his wife as if seeing a stranger. Get out, he said quietly. What? Get out of my mother's house. Get out now. Vincent, you can't be serious. I'm your wife. You're a woman I don't recognize, Vincent said, his voice breaking. I thought I knew you. I thought you were just ambitious, driven. But this? Trying to steal from my mother? Manipulating our daughter? Who are you? I'm the woman who gave you a child, Natasha screamed. I'm the woman who stood by you. And this is how you repay me? By choosing your pathetic mother over me? Yes, Vincent said simply. Because my pathetic mother raised me alone after my father died. She worked 2 jobs to put me through school. She never asked me for anything. And you tried to take the one thing she has left. So yes, I choose her. I will always choose her. Natasha's face contorted with rage. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, then turned back. You'll regret this, Vincent. All of you. I'll take you for everything in the divorce. I'll make sure you never see Ruby again. Actually, Harrison interrupted, given the evidence of fraud and the testimony we have, including from your own daughter, I don't think you'll be in a position to make any demands. In fact, I'd suggest you'll be lucky to avoid criminal charges. Natasha looked around the room, seeing no allies, no sympathy. Her family was already edging toward the door, clearly wanting to distance themselves from the situation. "This isn't over," she hissed, then stormed out. Her family followed quickly, Theodore muttering about lawyers, Priscilla sobbing about the scandal, and Damien just looking terrified. After they left, the room was quiet. Vincent sat down heavily, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice muffled. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should have protected you." I sat beside him and put my hand on his shoulder. "You see it now. That's what matters. I let her treat you terribly. I stood by while she insulted you, mocked you, tried to take your home. What kind of son does that? A son who was trying to keep his family together," I said gently. "A son who wanted to believe the best in his wife. You're not to blame for her choices, Vincent." "But I enabled them," he said, looking up at me with tears in his eyes. "I should have stood up for you from the beginning." "You're standing up for me now," I said. "That's what counts." Ruby, who had been sitting quietly in the corner during all of this, suddenly ran over and hugged me tightly. "Grandma, I'm sorry Mommy was so mean to you." I held her close, feeling her small body shake with sobs. "It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault." "Is Mommy going to jail?" Ruby asked, her voice small. Vincent and I exchanged glances. "We don't know yet, honey," Vincent said. "But whatever happens, Daddy and Grandma will take care of you. You'll always be safe and loved." Over the next few weeks, the situation unfolded exactly as Harrison had predicted. Natasha hired an expensive lawyer and tried to fight the divorce, demanding half of everything Vincent owned. But when faced with the evidence of her attempted fraud, her lawyer advised her to settle quietly. The divorce was finalized within 3 months. Vincent got primary custody of Ruby, with Natasha receiving supervised visitation. The judge, after reviewing all the evidence, including Ruby's testimony about what she'd overheard, made it clear that Natasha was lucky to avoid criminal charges. Theodore Kensington's business reputation took a serious hit when word got out about his family's attempt to defraud an elderly woman. Several of his business partners quietly distanced themselves from him. Priscilla stopped showing her face at her country club, and Damien, facing potential charges related to the corrupt notary, agreed to testify against Gerald Finch in exchange for immunity. As for me, I stayed in my house, my wonderful, creaky, memory-filled house. Vincent and Ruby moved in with me temporarily while Vincent looked for a new place. It was like having my son back as a boy, except now he was the one making me breakfast and helping with repairs. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching Ruby play in the garden, Vincent said, "Mom, I've been thinking about the will." "What about it?" I asked. "I think you made the right choice. Leaving the house to Ruby. She loves it here. And honestly, after everything that happened, I don't think I could ever sell it. Too many memories." "Good memories, I hope," I said. "The best," Vincent replied. "You know, I'd forgotten what it was like here, how peaceful it is, how the house smells like you're cooking and old books, how the floorboards creak in that familiar way. Natasha always made me feel like this place was something to be ashamed of, but it's not. It's home." I squeezed his hand. "It's always been home, and it always will be." A few months later, Harrison called with interesting news. One of the developers who'd been interested in the land had made an offer, not to buy the property, but to lease a portion of the land for a community garden and small park, with my house remaining exactly where it was. "They're offering $200,000 a year for a 20-year lease," Harrison said. "You'd keep the house and the immediate property around it, but they'd develop the rest into green space. It's actually a brilliant compromise." I thought about it and agreed. The money would go into Ruby's trust, growing her inheritance even more, and I'd get to stay in my home, surrounded by gardens and families enjoying the park. The day the park opened, there was a small ceremony. The developer had insisted on naming it Ashford Community Gardens in honor of my family. Vincent, Ruby, and I stood together as they unveiled the sign. Ruby squeezed my hand. "Grandma, your house isn't a dump at all. It's famous now." I laughed. "I don't know about famous, sweetheart, but it's loved, and that's much more important." Natasha showed up at the ceremony, standing at the back of the crowd. She looked different, less polished, more worn. When our eyes met, I saw something in her face. Not quite remorse, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. After the ceremony, she approached hesitantly. "Lorraine, I wanted to say." I waited, but she seemed unable to find the words. Finally, she said, "I was wrong. About a lot of things. I let greed blind me to what really mattered. I hurt you, and I hurt my own daughter in the process. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did, who I became." I looked at this woman who had caused me so much pain, and I felt something unexpected. Pity. She'd lost everything: her marriage, her daughter's trust, her family's respect, all because she couldn't see past dollar signs to the real value of things. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Natasha," I said quietly. "But I hope you learn that it's not found in big houses or expensive things. It's found in the people who love you and the memories you make with them." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. I never saw her again. Ruby continued to visit me every weekend. We'd bake cookies, read books in the window seat, and plant flowers in the garden. Vincent met someone new eventually. A kind woman named Claire who worked as a teacher and who loved my house from the moment she saw it. "It has such character," Claire said the first time Vincent brought her to meet me. "You can feel the love in every room." I knew then that Vincent had finally learned the lesson I'd been trying to teach him all along. That the value of something isn't measured in money, but in the love and memories it holds. On my 75th birthday, surrounded by Vincent, Claire, Ruby, Mavis, and a few close friends, I looked around my old house and felt nothing but gratitude. The walls were still the same. The floorboards still creaked. The porch still needed painting. But it was home. It had always been home. And no amount of money, no mansion in Lincoln Park, no designer furniture could ever replace what this house represented. A life well lived, a family well loved, and memories that would last forever. Ruby, now 11 and growing into a thoughtful young woman, stood up and raised her glass of lemonade. "A toast," she said, "to Grandma and to this house, the best house in the whole world." Everyone raised their glasses, and as I looked around at the faces of the people I loved, in the house that held my heart, I knew that I was the richest woman alive. Not because of the $4 million the property was worth, not because of the lease money or the trust fund or any of it, but because I had something Natasha would never understand. I had love, I had family, and I had a home that was built not with money, but with sacrifice, dedication, and the kind of love that lasts forever. And in the end, that was worth more than all the mansions in the world. The story you have just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identity of the people involved. We don't tell it to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many elderly people are suffering in silence, their homes and dignity threatened by those who should protect them? I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you give in to keep the peace? Or would you stand firm to protect what you've built? I want to know your opinion because every story can become a light that guides others. God always blesses, and I am certain that dignity and truth will always prevail over greed. Right now on the end screen, I will leave 2 of the most beloved stories from the channel. I'm convinced they will move you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.